My mother fired me from our family company and called me a failure. My name is Ethan Carter. I was 32 years old when my own mother fired me from the family business in front of 50 employees. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're the biggest failure this family has ever produced." Everyone in the conference room stayed silent. No one defended me. Not my father, not my younger brother, not even the employees I had spent years helping. I quietly picked up the small cardboard box holding my laptop, a family photo, and a coffee mug that read "World's Best Son," a gift my mother had once given me. The irony almost made me laugh. Instead, I walked out of Carter Manufacturing for the last time. As the elevator doors closed, I had no idea that losing everything that day would become the greatest blessing of my life. 10 years earlier, my grandfather, William Carter, had started Carter Manufacturing with nothing but an old truck and a welding machine. He believed in honesty more than profits. When he retired, everyone assumed my mother, Victoria Carter, would continue his legacy. She did, but she slowly transformed the company into something very different. Everything became about money, status, and appearances. Employees stopped feeling like family. They became numbers. I graduated with an engineering degree because I wanted to improve the company. While my friends joined famous corporations with six-figure salaries, I accepted a modest paycheck to work beside my family. I believed loyalty mattered. I was wrong. My younger brother, Ryan, had no interest in engineering. He loved expensive cars, designer suits, and social media. Yet somehow, Mother promoted him every year. Within 5 years, he became vice president. I remained operations manager. Whenever I questioned her decisions, she'd smile politely. "Ethan," she'd say, "Ryan understands business. You're just good with machines." Those words stayed with me. Still, I kept working. I modernized production, reduced waste, increased profits, created safety programs that cut workplace accidents by nearly 60%. Every success was credited to Ryan. Every problem was blamed on me. I convinced myself things would eventually change. They never did. Then came the biggest contract in company history, a government manufacturing deal worth over $60 million. I spent 8 exhausting months preparing the proposal. Late nights, weekend meetings, hundreds of revisions. Ryan barely attended a single planning session. The day we presented the project, Mother introduced Ryan as the mastermind behind everything. I stood quietly in the back of the room. The contract was approved. Everyone applauded Ryan. That evening, I finally confronted Mother. I did all the work. She didn't even look up from her paperwork. Family isn't about recognition, Ethan. It's about sacrifice. I asked one simple question. "So why am I always the one sacrificing?" She sighed. "Because Ryan is leadership material, and you're not." Those words broke something inside me. A month later, production delays started appearing. Ryan had ignored several supplier contracts. Instead of admitting his mistakes, he blamed my department. Mother believed him immediately. An emergency board meeting was called. I walked into the conference room expecting a discussion. Instead, my termination papers were already waiting. Mother folded her hands. "Ethan Carter. Effective immediately. You're dismissed for gross incompetence." The room spun. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ryan leaned back with a smug smile. Mother continued, "You've embarrassed this family long enough." Then she spoke the sentence I'd never forget. "You're a failure." I signed the papers without saying a word. Not because I agreed, because I knew arguing would change nothing. As I reached the door, one elderly employee named Mr. Harris quietly whispered, "They're making the biggest mistake of their lives." I smiled sadly. Maybe. Then I left. For the first time in 12 years, I was unemployed and completely alone. The first few weeks after being fired were the hardest of my life. Every morning, I woke up at 6 out of habit. For 12 years, my life had revolved around Carter Manufacturing. Now there was nowhere to go. Friends I had worked with stopped returning my calls. Some were afraid of losing their jobs. Others simply believed the rumors. According to the company, I had been fired because I was incompetent. Within days, everyone in town seemed to know. At the grocery store, people whispered when I walked past. One afternoon, I ran into an old supplier. He shook his head. I never thought you'd destroy your family's business. I smiled politely. I didn't. He didn't believe me, neither did anyone else. My savings were disappearing quickly. To pay my mortgage, I sold my sports car and canceled every unnecessary expense. For the first time since college, I wondered if my mother had been right. Maybe I really was a failure. Then, one rainy afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. Hello? A calm voice replied. Mr. Carter, my name is Daniel Brooks. We met 3 years ago at the National Manufacturing Expo. I remembered him immediately. He owned a small but growing industrial company. I heard what happened, Daniel said. I don't believe a word of it. His words caught me off guard. Why? Because I watched you solve production problems that experienced executives couldn't. He paused. I'd like to meet. The next morning, we met at a quiet coffee shop. Daniel didn't ask about the rumors. Instead, he slid a notebook across the table. Our factory is losing money. Tell me what you'd do. For 3 hours, we analyzed his business. I identified outdated equipment, inefficient workflows, and supplier issues. Daniel listened without interrupting. Finally, he smiled. I was hoping you'd say exactly that. Then he made an offer that changed everything. I can't match the salary your family paid, but I can offer something better. A partnership. Not a job, a partnership. For the first time in years, someone believed in me not because I was a Carter, but because of my ability. I accepted immediately. The next 12 months were exhausting. Daniel and I worked 16-hour days. We redesigned the factory floor, negotiated better supplier contracts, introduced automation where it actually made sense. Most importantly, we treated employees with respect. Every worker knew their ideas mattered. Productivity soared. Within 18 months, the struggling company had tripled its revenue. Industry magazines began writing about our incredible turnaround. Customers who had ignored us started calling every day. One morning, while reading a business newspaper, I nearly dropped my coffee. The headline read, Carter Manufacturing faces massive financial losses after failed expansion. I kept reading. Ryan had approved several risky investments without understanding the market. Production delays had become worse. Major clients were canceling contracts. The company my grandfather had built was in serious trouble. For the first time since being fired, I didn't feel angry. I felt sad. Grandpa had spent his entire life building that business. Now it was collapsing because pride had replaced competence. A week later, my assistant entered my office. Ethan, there's someone here to see you. She says she's family. I looked through the glass wall. Standing in the reception area was my mother, the same woman who had called me a failure. But this time, she wasn't wearing her usual confident smile. She looked tired, nervous, almost desperate. I took a deep breath. After 2 years of silence, my mother fired me from our family company and called me a failure part 3. I stood outside my office for a few seconds before opening the door. My mother slowly turned toward me. For the first time in my life, she looked older. Not because of her age, but because the confidence she had always carried was gone. Ethan, she said quietly, it's been a long time. I nodded. What do you need? She looked around the office. The walls displayed awards from industry associations. A large glass window overlooked our modern factory, where hundreds of employees worked efficiently. Everything she saw had been built after she fired me. You've done well, she admitted. I've worked hard. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Finally, she spoke. Carter Manufacturing is in trouble. I didn't answer. The banks are refusing more loans. We've lost 3 major clients. Suppliers want payment in advance. She swallowed hard. I need your help. Those 4 words felt almost unbelievable. The woman who had once called me a failure was now asking me to save her company. I leaned back in my chair. Where's Ryan? Her expression changed. He resigned. I wasn't surprised. When things became difficult, he left. Exactly as I expected. For years, Ryan had enjoyed success he hadn't earned. The moment responsibility arrived, he disappeared. Mother looked down at her hands. I made mistakes. I waited, she continued. I believed confidence was the same as leadership. I thought popularity meant competence. I was wrong. It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever heard from her. She reached into her bag and placed a folder on my desk. "We're asking if your company would consider buying Carter Manufacturing." I opened the file. The numbers were worse than I imagined. Millions in debt, outdated equipment, damaged reputation, lawsuits from former clients. This wasn't just a struggling business. It was a company on the edge of bankruptcy. I closed the folder. "If I buy it, I won't run it the way you did." She nodded silently. "There will be changes." "I know. Ryan won't have any position." She looked away. "I understand. The employees who stayed loyal through all this will keep their jobs." She nodded again. Then I asked the question I had carried in my heart for years. "Why?" She looked confused. "Why did you always choose Ryan?" Tears slowly filled her eyes. "Because he reminded me of your father when he was young. And you reminded me of myself. I expected perfection from you because I knew you were capable. I took you for granted." Her voice broke. "I never realized how much I was hurting you." For the first time since childhood, my mother cried, not because she had lost money, because she had finally understood what she had lost long before the business failed. I remained silent for several moments. Then I stood up and extended my hand. "I'll buy the company." Hope appeared on her face. "But understand something. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it for Grandpa. He built that company with integrity. I won't let his legacy disappear." She shook my hand. "Thank you." A month later, the acquisition was complete. The Carter name remained on the building, but the culture changed completely. Employees received better benefits. Safety became the top priority again. Managers were promoted based on ability, not family connections. Within 2 years, the company returned to profitability. One afternoon, I visited Grandpa's old workshop. His worn-out welding machine still stood in the corner. I smiled. He had once told me, "A person's greatest success isn't proving others wrong. It's staying true to who they are, even when everyone doubts them." Back then, I hadn't understood. Now I did. The woman who called me a failure had unknowingly pushed me toward the greatest success of my life.